are listening to Terminal City Tales at CFRO 100.5 FM Vancouver Co-op Radio. Terminal City Tales is a program that brings you stories told by people like you. Today's episode is a special edition. You are in for some realistic, true-to-life but fictional stories from people who live in Vancouver. Since fiction is not our usual content, we have decided to call this episode Once in a Blue Moon. You will hear stories from Kyla del Rosario, Malcolm van Delst, and Wylie McLallen. Our first story is from Kyla del Rosario, recorded live at last December's Story Slam.
She went by another name once, but that was before she moved to North America with her new husband. In an English-speaking continent, she chose an English-sounding name. She picked Fiona because it sounded beautiful, but she couldn't pronounce it properly. Her native language did not have the letter F in its alphabet, so whenever she introduced herself, she said, "My name is Fiona." It confused people, but Fiona insisted on using it. If she couldn't choose her husband, she could at least choose her name. She was lonely, so her husband let her join a book club consisting of other army wives. But when she introduced herself as Fiona, the women stared, first at her and then at each other. They were silent, but Fiona could see a flicker of malice in their eyes. Barb, the book club president, said, "Okay, Fiona," dragging out the letter F. "I'm sure you'll learn a lot here." And she did. She delved into classic literature and devoured the words. She learned the system and structure of the English language, but proper pronunciation proved difficult. In her head, she could recite, "Have you finished dinner?" Instead, she would ask, "Have you finished dinner?" To which her cheeky husband would reply, "No penis with my dinner, but I have one down here just for you." Though Fiona knew the book club didn't like her, she attended every single meeting. They were the only people she talked to besides her husband, and during one discussion, she referred to them as her friends, or as she called them, her friends. When she said it, they smiled and held back their laughter, and Fiona noticed that, and she stifled the urge to cry. But she didn't want to annoy her friends, so she just smiled and nodded. After that, she intentionally avoided the letter F. She would say, "This was my most liked story," instead of, "This is my favorite story." The cleverness intrigued the book club, so they made a game out of it. The first one to make Fiona slip would win. They'd say things like, "It's a fine day today," and Fiona would reply, "Yes, it's lovely." They'd ask, "Do you think so-and-so's decision was fair?" And she'd reply, "It was an honest decision." They'd offer her coffee or tea, and she'd always pick tea, even though she loved coffee. Finally, Barb put Fiona in charge of next week's discussion on an F. Scott Fitzgerald book. Fiona would be expected to say the author's name and book title, so the poor woman spent the entire weekend making up for a month's worth of lost letter Fs. She practiced tongue twisters like "flies fly, but a fly flies," and she recited F. Scott Fitzgerald's name so much it became her mantra. Before breakfast, lunch, and dinner, she'd say his name instead of the Lord's, and it was almost a religious experience for her. So, on Monday at the book club, Fiona announced, "Today we'll talk about F. Scott Fitzgerald's book, This Side Up Paradise." Whoops. She went pale and corrected herself. "This side off paradise, off paradise." But it was too late. She couldn't believe she slipped on a small, simple, forgettable word. Off. Too late. The ladies were laughing, and Barb won the game. "Oh, Fiona, you're so funny," she exclaimed, and Fiona wanted to bury her head into the book and cry, so she got up and headed into the book club's kitchen. After the laughter died down, she heard Barb's voice. "Now Fiona's out of the way, let's begin the proper discussion." And Fiona wiped away her tears and asked the heavens for help in mending the dissonance between her mind and her mouth. And for once, she'd like to say something exactly as it sounded in her head. F. Scott Fitzgerald, this side of paradise. F. Fitzgerald off. F. Fitz off. F off. So Fiona marched into the living room, cleared her throat because she was a nice woman. She said, "Excuse me, leading the discussion today is my job." But Fiona flustered as Barb plastered a fake smile on her face and said, "Fiona, dear, why don't you just go home?" And Fiona returned the smile with one just as sweet and said, "Barb, dear, why don't you just f*** off?" Thank you.
You have just heard a story from Kyla del Rosario. This is Terminal City Tales at Vancouver Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM. Our next story is an excerpt from Malcolm Van Delst's novel, Doing the Wrong Thing. Once again, this is Malcolm Van Delst.
Rob arrives at Sebastian. He lives in Morrilton. Glamorous. Morrilton is closer to Ottawa than Dardanelle. The kids who live there are serious and tragic. The boys have long hair, and the girls tight jeans and roach clips with long fuzzy tails attached to the narrow straps of their small, low-slung purses. Morrilton is drugs, Dardanelle beer, Pottsville cocktails or church, upstanding citizens. I'd move to Morrilton if I had my way. I want to be dark and mysterious. I'm tired of people treating me like I'm harmless. I can hurt people. I can say things. They should fear me. The way Rob looks at me. He starts at my feet and swings his eyes from one side to the other as he moves upwards. When he reaches my eyes, he holds them. Well, he holds them once. After that, I never look at him again. I mean, I look at him. I've fallen in love, I think. But I blush so harshly under his gaze, it's agony. Rob is not attractive in the traditional sense. He's got bags under his eyes, and not only from lack of sleep. His lips are large and stretched out. If he was a woman, you'd think he'd had bad plastic surgery. His skin is translucent, pale. He's got shiny black hair that he cuts into a stylized mullet similar to pop and rock stars. He's tall, thin, and most importantly, has the courage to wear a black motorcycle jacket to school. He's 2 years younger than me. He's in my sister's grade. It's outrageous that he's looking at a girl older than him. I know I shouldn't be attracted to him. Rick, from St. Patrick's and St. Bridget's, has a party at the end of the year. It's another monster party like Jerry's, only this one is Sebastian-based. By this time, Rob is no longer looking me up and down. He continues to look me in the eye, though, in the hallways when we pass. I scowl. He does it anyway. God, am I sad when he starts dating Christine Panagopoulos? At Rick's party, I see Rob and Christine outside on the lawn. He's sitting up and she's lying beside him, her head in his lap. Afterwards, I tell people she was giving him a blowjob. That's how jealous I am. At 2 a.m. the phone rings. It's my mother, I joke, tracking me down wherever I am. Mathilde, it's for you. I'm helping Rick clean up, Mom. I'm in a quiet study at the end of the hall. The living room, completely trashed and holding about 20 people now, is attached to the hall. At the end of the hall is the kitchen, where another 10 or so people hang out. I'm not completely lying. I often help clean up. It's the right thing to do. And the party is winding down. My mother admires Rick's parents. They go to church every Sunday. They are successful farmers. She won't scream bloody murder when I can expect not to be grounded or have my allowance docked because of this. Don't take too long, she says. On Monday, Rick says the carpet in his living room has to be replaced. Beer, wine, muddy shoes, and vomit because James couldn't make it outside or to the bathroom destroyed it. I wonder if my mom will find out. Here's a stretch I don't remember. Grade 12. I'd guess there were the usual dances and house parties, schoolwork, fights with Mom. There was running away from home and the dead kitten. I try to ward off my dad's punches. I run through the room where we keep our outdoor clothes, trip and fall on the 3 stairs leading to the garage, or basement, depending which way you turn at the bottom. He's right behind me. I slide down the stairs, crying, screaming. He lands a blow and my glasses go flying. This is all in slow motion. Dad has never hit me before. Mom's the violent one. Dad is sad, quiet. I don't remember what Mom and I were fighting about. Dad snapped. He's saying something to me now like, can't you for once not make a fuss? Can't you just do what she says and stop antagonizing her? Dad would never say antagonizing, though. The scene is mostly silent. His mouth moves, but all I hear is the buzzing and whimpering sounds in my head. Me whimpering. Interspersed with yelling. Me yelling at Dad to stop. There are gurgling sounds, like when you submerge in water in between the yelling and the whimpering. I grab for my glasses as they twist and fall from my face. I miss. I slide, squirm down the stairs and push out the door to the garage. Now it's cold. The driveway crunches under my steps, but from crisp, hard, icy snow, not gravel. The swing set off to the right, at the tip of the grassy area in the middle of the circular driveway, is about a foot under, glazed with ice. I run. I've got shoes or boots on, maybe even a coat. Yeah, I have a coat. I pull it tightly around myself, crying and panicky. I head to the barn. There, I go to the abandoned kitten. The one of my brothers found, almost dead from starvation and freezing in the haymow. We'd built it a bed and home from an old cardboard box. We fed it milk every night. I go to the abandoned kitten. She's dead. Stiff and thin, like a paper doll that someone glued ratty gray fur to on both sides, then added caramel pudding by her button down one leg to mimic diarrhea. They've even scented her, with that really bad, flat, roundish smell. You know an animal is sick when their diarrhea doesn't smell sharp, but flat, worse than putrid. I hug the cardboard kitten that isn't cardboard but real. I take her into my coat, rocking against a whitewashed wall behind me as I sit on the cement beside her box. Back and forth I move. I don't think about me, or my dad, or my mom. It's just the kitten. The flattened kitten with her haunches sticking out, covered in yellow shit. Another fight with Mom. Sandra and I run through the mudroom. I grab the car keys off the hook. We drive to Arbor, not knowing what else to do or where else to go. I call the 70s equivalent of the kids' helpline from a phone booth. It's still winter. Crisp, cold. Is there anyone you can talk to? The operator asks. There's my Aunt Else, I say between sobs. Call her. She's firm, sympathetic. There's nothing I can do, honey, she says. We don't have the resources. There are kids in much worse situations than us, I realize. We should be happy that they can't help us. It means... I don't want to think about what it means because I'm crying and in pain. My mother is always angry. She hits us. She hates us. She's always crying. Aunt Else makes us tea. We talk, but mostly sit in silence. Aunt Else calls my mom, eventually. Sandra and I drive home.
This was Malcolm van Delst, a writer and the organizer of Vancouver Writers Group. Our next story is by Wylie McLallen.
I'm Wylie Graham McLallen, and the story that I'm going to read is called On a Small Stage in Vancouver. The club room in Gastown had good acoustics. It was long and broad with the bar along one side and tables on the other. The stage was at the far end. The band playing that night was a country rock soul group of 5 musicians and a noted singer who had not appeared in public for almost 2 years. All of the members were young, including the singer. The singer, though wearing a colorful Western shirt and Stetson hat, had a somber, uncertain air about him. But the other band members, moving around and setting up equipment, smiled and looked thrilled to be performing this night. The crowd started coming early because happy hour began at 5, and it was Friday, and the office workers were in a mood to celebrate the weekend. There are many offices in the buildings in Gastown, and also many young pretty women. But young pretty women were not on the mind of the singer, although a few years earlier that's all he seemed to think about when he wasn't so drunk that he couldn't speak. And it had gotten to be that he would start the day with a drink and not stop, and become so drunk that he couldn't speak almost all the time. That was not so long ago, and the memory was sharp and still plagued Jesse. Jesse's last name was Lorraine, but he didn't like to give it anymore, only introducing himself as Jesse now. Before, he had practically shouted his whole name, always saying it loud because he wanted everyone in the world to know it, and many did know his name, for he had had an album make the charts, and his songs were played on the radio. The lights had been bright for that little while, too bright and noisy, and everything got confused. And so now he felt, at least for a while, he would only give out his first name, and to him that felt like more than enough. From the stage where he was sitting in a chair tilted against the wall, Jesse arched his back and stretched his arms, leaned forward and stood up. He rose to his full height with his boots making him even taller, took a deep breath, and walked the length of the room. Some of the band members were having drinks at the bar and conversing with the gathering crowd, but Jesse did not. He paused at the entrance, holding his Stetson in his lowered hands, and, silhouetted at the open door, looked at the people in the long bar, thinking he dare not drink. Then he turned and slipped away, disappearing. Judy, the backup singer, who also played fiddle, reached for her heart apprehensively. But she realized he was just taking himself away from the drinks. That could be the only reason, she thought. Certainly he will return for the session. I think this means too much to him, she said to the other musicians who were also watching, for he really is a fine singer. In fact, for most of them, Jesse was the reason they became country musicians. He was so talented and young and had quickly risen so high that he had given hope to a new generation of performers. But his career had suddenly crashed. At his last performance, he kicked in a set of drums and threw his $1,000 boots at the crowd. They were amazed and saddened by his terrible fall. And for whatever might happen on this evening, the band knew they needed each other very much. Judy looked around at the crowd. They were bright, well-dressed people coming off work, ready to enjoy themselves, and she wanted them happy and entertained. If Jesse does well tonight, she told the others, then we all do well. The bar where they were playing was sort of like a cellar, and when Jesse left, he walked up the incline of its alley onto Cordova Street. He did not strut. That too was gone from inside of him, and he wandered around abstractedly, but not so absent-mindedly, not to notice the people walking along in the renovated older buildings rising around him. He liked watching people, and the sidewalks were crowded. Gastown is a busy place in the early evening. He looked at his watch and thought, I have some time, and wandered further westward, leaving Gastown, and entered a wide open area before a large red brick railroad terminal that loomed archaic with age. What the hell am I doing up here in Canada, he wondered. Then, remembering the great huge black nurse at the hospital in Nashville, who had loved him like a mother, forcing him to leave and go back into the world, telling him, You're a singer, go sing. He shrugged his shoulders. Well, I guess it's as good a place as anywhere else to try to get started again, he thought. He remembered other things, too, like the time in a crowded hotel lobby, in a drunken, egotistical fit, when he had berated his former manager with lots of other people gathered around watching. Now realizing that that man had been his friend, he winced. He paused in front of a larger-than-life-size bronze statue of a young Canadian soldier being carried aloft by a winged blessed angel, and could not determine if the soldier was dead. I guess it's honorable to fight when a nation is in peril, he thought. Many people are wounded in life. Some are even killed. Discerningly, he walked on among the crowd past the station to a curved street full of taxis waiting for people coming out of hotels. It was summer. The evening light was long, and he saw a dark man in a white robe wearing a purple turban. Vancouver has many visitors from throughout the world, he realized, looking up at the gigantic gleaming buildings, knowing they were hotels. This seems to be the epicenter of tourists. His own hotel was a few blocks away in an area shabby in comparison, and, having found himself in a nice part of town, decided to take advantage of the hour. He meandered onto a broad sidewalk, circumnavigating the large hotel by the water. Jesse, who was from a small town in Iowa, looked up at the white cruise ship docked next to the hotel. That boat is almost as big as the hotel, he thought almost aloud. He continued walking along the promenade to the edge of the inlet and stopped. Leaning on the rail, completely enthralled, he took a long look at the mountains rising across the calm blue water. I know I've seen mountains as beautiful crossing the Rockies, but these are so beautiful that they look as beautiful as anything I've ever seen. Then his head dipped as his thoughts suddenly became dark and enveloping. It seemed something was about to possess him, and then, just as it seemed he might be overcome, he slowly lifted his head and looked at the mountains, and his mood lightened. A cool breeze caught his face, and he could smell the salt of the sea in the air. I didn't really want to be the greatest ever, he thought, his mouth parting in meditation. No, I had no idea of what that really is, that such a thing is not even real. What I felt was a fear of not being the greatest ever. Jesse's face leveled, and thinking and seeing, he looked without noticing the tugboat passing in front, blowing its horn, making a loud noise. What was it that Tolstoy wrote? Oh, yes. We cannot return to a delusion once it's been exposed. Yes, that's in War and Peace, which was one of the books he had read during a lengthy stay in a dependency unit. It must be true. I'm sure it is. Standing on the edge of the great hotel that protruded out into the inlet in the Pacific Northwest, a place he had never before been, captivated by the beauty of the Canadian city and the surrounding mountains, he looked at his watch, knew it was time to return, and walked along the moving streets back to the club where the band was playing. It wasn't quite 8. He walked into the bar, and when his eyes adjusted to the cavern-like darkness, he noticed the anxiety on the face of his band members, and understanding that they were probably fearful he might not show, he smiled and raised his hand with the sign of peace. This, in his sober appearance, brought relief to their faces. I thought I'd take a break and see this beautiful town while you all do all the setting up work, he joked, and they laughed good-naturedly. Soon they were ready to begin. A nice melody filled the air. The band was working well together. It only took them a few moments. Jesse Lorraine had a quality of bringing out the best in musicians until his ego had gotten in the way, but his ego wasn't happening now. Their first song was written by a Canadian named Ian Tyson called Someday Soon, which the band had reworked to be sung by a man and accompanied to with the gentle tinkling jingle of an xylophone. Jesse's smooth, robust baritone entered the song with perfect timing and pitch. The whole crowded bar turned to listen with pleasure, captivated and charmed, especially when the singer swayed to the music and smiled. Judy smiled too, and so did the other musicians. Their next song was Riding on the City of New Orleans, and the bar liked it even better. When someone shouted a request for one of Jesse's songs, Jesse declined, but the band was too enthusiastically for it, and so they performed a raucous, jumpy tune called Roadhouse Living. The crowd got jumpy and louder. They seemed about to explode. But Jesse knew it was only a small tavern, that he was only singing songs, and he enjoyed himself.
You're listening to Terminal City Tales. That was Wylie McLallen. If you want to check out more stories by Vancouver writers, go to Podomatic.com to listen to their podcasts. That's Vancouver Writers Group at Podomatic.com. Once again, this is Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. Visit our website at coopradio.org to listen to more of our shows and to enjoy the previous episodes of Terminal City Tales. And now for the events. Be sure to check out tonight's Story Slam at Cottage Bistro. The event starts at 8 p.m. and it's $5 at the door. Terminal City Tales will be there. Come by and say hello. And this Friday, we're in for another storytelling treat. Story Story Live will present its May edition. That's at Café du Soleil this coming Friday, May the 12th. The show starts at 9 p.m. Check out their Facebook page if you need more details. We'd also like to mention our sister co-op radio program, The Storytelling Show. This show is about women's storytelling in all its variations. They're on every Sunday at 9 p.m. Details at facebook.com/storytellingshow. You've been listening to Terminal City Tales, the program that brings you stories told by people like you. Today's show was Once in a Blue Moon. Our storytellers were Kyla del Rosario, Malcolm van Delst, and Wylie McLallen. Terminal City Tales is produced by Pam Bentley, Ben Bisset, Dale McGladdery, and me, Victoria Fe. That's it for today's show. We hope you enjoyed it. Come back again next week for a whole new set of stories. We're going to leave you with Borrowed Moon, a song by a local band called Pink Bricks.